Fast fashion is rampant worldwide. Although great for cheap, affordable clothing, it comes at a huge cost. One such example of this is from my own country of Ireland, known here as Penneys, but most of you will probably know it under the name of Primark if you are someone that shops outside of Ireland. Now, unfortunately, just like other fast fashion companies, Primark appears to have some shady practices that allows consumers to buy so much clothes at such a cheap price. Now, Primark was founded by Arthur Ryan in Dublin, Ireland in 1969. Ryan was backed by the Weston family who owned Associated British Food. Their original concept was simple: provide fashionable, affordable prices that was targeted at a money-conscious consumer. And it wasn't long before it gained huge popularity in Ireland because Ireland simply had never seen anything like this before. As the company planned to expand internationally, it discovered that the name Penneys was already trademarked by JCPenney in the United States. So to avoid legal issues, the brand adopted the name Primark for operations outside of Ireland. In 1973, Primark's first UK store opened in Derby, England, making its entry into a larger market, and by the 90s was one of the most recognizable names in affordable fashion. It would go on to expand in Europe in the 2000s and eventually would go to the United States in 2015. Primark currently operates with over 400 stores in 15 countries. Now, to come from a small Irish retailer to expanding to 15 countries with 400 stores is very impressive. Although the company's main demographic tends to be 16 to 24 year olds, Primark definitely appeals to older people too. Their range is huge in variation, but the majority of their sales definitely comes from women's clothing. This year alone, Primark has made over 11.385 billion euro worldwide. So to say they're doing well is a understatement. In fact, the only time that they seem to actually lose any money was during COVID lockdowns. Primark has come under repeated scrutiny for its ethics in recent years. One supplier of Primark actually locked their workers inside a factory as an attempt to prevent them from joining any sort of anti-coup protests. In 2020, factory workers in Myanmar say they were fired days after forming a union. In a move, workers say targeted union supporters under the pretense that layoffs were related to the coronavirus. After being fired, they were reportedly replaced by non-union workers. Factory workers were also forced to work 10-hour work days 6 days a week, where workers expected to regularly work overtime in order to make enough money to survive. Workers at the factory made around $3 per day, and on top of the unfair dismissals, there had also been reports of child labour. Primark was also linked to the collapse of the Rana Plaza, which was a garment factory in Bangladesh that killed over 1,100 workers and injured thousands more. Investigations revealed that workers at the factory faced unsafe working conditions, long hours and very low pay. And although Primark provided compensation to survivors, the incident remains a very dark mark on its history. Now, Primark's code of conduct requires suppliers to meet vital workers' rights criteria, including payment of living wages and no discrimination. And it's also apparently mapped 94% of its direct suppliers on its website, and says that it works with trade unions to ensure workplace representation. However, in 2008, the BBC investigated Primark's suppliers in southern India, revealing that they were using child labour, carrying out tasks such as hand embroidery and stitching on garments, which was intended to be exported to the UK and other markets. Now, some of them were reportedly as young as 11 years old, working in poorly ventilated environments for very little pay. Now, Primark denied having any direct involvement or any knowledge of the use of child labour by its suppliers, and the company claimed the violations occurred in subcontracted workshops that were not approved by Primark. Although the BBC actually would eventually go on to retract some of its comments on child labour, claiming that they couldn't actually directly prove that Primark was involved, it still doesn't look great on Primark. In the UK, Primark stores, it was also proven that they had owed their workers over £231,000 to around 10,000 workers just for charging those staff for their own uniforms. In Primark's defence, they do use independent organisations to audit the factories and ensure compliance with labour laws. However, the company's business model, which is of course based on producing high volumes of low-cost clothing, creates these systematic incentives for suppliers to cut corners. And we see this kind of thing happening with suppliers in all chains of fast fashion. Primark will claim ignorance and promise to improve these issues, issues, but we can never really say for sure, one way or another, if they actually had any knowledge of the abuses that take place in their supply chain, although I would find it hard to believe that they wouldn't have any knowledge whatsoever. Now, despite these factory labour issues, Primark has had some other problems that are not ethical. The brand sells animal products including leather, feathers and wool, and according to Ethical Consumer, who searched for animal welfare policies related to these products, found that the company had some policies in place preventing the worst welfare outcomes for the animals involved, but they were not comprehensive, and a significant amount of its animal products were not covered by adequate policies to protect the safety of animals. Another issue common in fast industry is the environmental impact that they have. Every purchase from Primark contributes to a cycle of mass production, which is notorious for its heavy carbon footprint. According to Primark, they produce over 6 million tons of CO2 per year, and they say their plan is to reduce their emissions in half by 2030. Now, of course, another very common issue, as always, is the textile element, which is heavily water intensive, from the cultivation of cotton, which is notoriously water consuming, to the dyeing and treatment of fabrics. The water footprint of a single garment can be insanely high. Now, Primark again claim that they are rolling out energy and water efficiency pilot projects in China, though through the Apparel Impact Institute's Clean by Design program, and are also implementing their policies through RAP's Textiles Initiative 2030, which is the UK's leading voluntary initiative supporting businesses and organisations within the fashion and textiles industry to transition to a more sustainable and circular practice by the end of the decade. Now, many garments marketed as sustainable by Primark reportedly use a very, very small percentage of recycled or organic materials, and their high production volumes remain incompatible with true sustainability. And they've been accused, just like a lot of the other brands, of greenwashing, where they're claiming that they are creating more sustainable products, but in reality it's like the bare minimum amount of recycled material. And just like other fashion brands, they claim they will improve the issues in the environment, and who knows, maybe they will. Time will tell. However, the goalposts always seem to get moved in these types of policies, where the year or the target just constantly changes. The closer they get to the year, the more likely they have to add more years because they're just not hitting the targets. And Primark has also faced backlash for products that are deemed insensitive or offensive. Now, personally, I was surprised to see how exploitive Primark can be, although they seem to have put a lot more effort to improve their supply chain, their child labour issues, their modern day slavery, the low pay, the lack of safety, and even the lack of transparency than I've seen compared to other fast fashion brands. Either they genuinely care or they just have a better PR team. Either way, I think it's morally and ethically wrong what's happening. And I would be highly, highly suspicious on whether or not Primark actually had any real knowledge. I would suggest that they most likely did. Of course, you can never say for sure. But to me, it kind of feels like, how could you not know what issues were occurring through your supply chains, especially when this stuff was being made specifically for your company. And I've shopped there myself many, many times over the years. I'm a big fan of the place. I've always have been. I wasn't aware of how unethical things were until I started researching this stuff. And like I keep saying in all the fast fashion videos I've done, I totally understand the perspective of like not having a lot of money and people need to wear clothes. And if you don't have a lot of money, Primark or Penneys are offering you affordable, cheap clothing. Of course you're going to buy it. So this isn't me telling you that you should boycott Primark. The only thing I would suggest is, if you do keep buying from them, because we all kind of have to buy from somewhere, maybe reduce the amount of waste that you create. Me personally, I wear clothes until they nearly fall off me, so I try to get as much time out of it. Don't buy something, wear it once and throw it out, because someone had to suffer to make that for you, and then it's just going in a landfill. So I think if we can at least try to do something like that, maybe that can make a difference. True ethical transformation would require Primark, I think, to overhaul its reliance on low-cost labour, improve their own transparency, and shift towards a slower, more sustainable production model. But these changes are kind of go against what their core operating principles are. The thing is what's making them so much money. So at the end of the day, just like other fast fashion industries, they're a business and they need to make money. So them becoming more ethically, morally sustainable, as well as caring towards the supply chains, would cost them a lot of revenue. Because if the supply chains have to spend more money on their workforce, they're going to increase the cost of the Primark. Primark are going to put the cost on the consumer, and they would obviously fear that they would lose their consumer base, because the thing that makes Primark is the fact the clothes are so cheap. So it's kind of this vicious cycle that never seems to end. And it seems to be the same issue that Boohoo has, that Shein has, that even Temu has, Amazon has. You know, as long as there's hungry consumers, they will look the other way as much as they can, until we put them under enough pressure that they actually make real change, not just claim to make change, not just put up these policies on their websites. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below what you think. Do you shop at Primark yourself? Were you aware, just like with the other fashion brands, how corrupt things can be, even for someone like Primark? Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace out.